and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. My name is Chris, the High Guy Jacobs, and today we've got another episode of Do's and Don'ts. This time we're taking a look at what things to do and what things not to do during wartime in the events. Now, the reason why we talk about this is because this game has a lot of downtime, but there's a lot of actual fight times as well. During Archipelago Raid, which we're doing right now, during Island Raid, during Jungle Crisis, all this kind of stuff. There's some key things that you want to kind of keep in mind when it comes to doing things during wartime. Now, this can translate into Pompeii. This can somewhat translate into things like Genesis War. This is we'll see what Genesis War comes out with the new one. But it can do it for off limits, things like that. So we're going to take a look at what I think are some of the do's and don'ts when it comes to war times that you should start to adopt yourself, or at least get your alliance to start adopting some of these things as well. Because, again, everything I do about this game is about efficiency, about trying to be as efficient with the resources as we can. And that comes down to a lot of things. Not only is it food and wood and steel and oil, but it's things like relocators and stuff like that too. Pardon me. So we're going to start through, and we're going to go through a list of about 7 or 8 different things that I obviously want to mention when it comes to wartime. And this could be during Archipelago, could be during Island Raid, could be during Jungle Crisis, any of this kind of stuff. You'll see how it plays out through a lot of that. First and foremost, we're going to talk about shelter placement. When you spawn in, and as you build up your territory, right, as you'll see, we have some territory over here. One of the things you want to keep aware of is placement of your shelter. Because here's the thing, as we move into restricted areas, as we move into closer parts of the map, you'll see that we can't actually utilize parts of our territory. We can't actually put shelters here. So unfortunately, we're losing out on some of that territory. Now, as we start to place shelters in, which is fine, we want to be as close as possible. But if you leave out areas like this, for example, well, how is a player, like, just enough space here for them to kind of get in? You know, truth be told, I thought this was going to make it, so that's kind of egg on my face. But the point is, you want to make sure that you're always moving your shelters as close to each other as possible. Any of these situations where you have open space like this, or we start to see, you know, players kind of moving away from each other, it just starts to create problems when you're trying to get other shelters in close. You see how much wasted space there's here? For example, Bear Brand and Love Etch, or I can't even pronounce it, Love Channel. I'm not sure how you would, whatever. That person there, there's space even between those two shelters, right? You see how much space is there between shelters? You see how much space is there between Sugar Snap, between Bomb Coffee? Like, we end up with lots of space between each other, right? Which for example, if Beck was farther up here, if Semyaza was a bit farther up, we could fit a whole other person in here. Which is kind of what we're talking about, being efficient. You have to be efficient with your territory as well, where you place your shelter. There's nothing worse than trying to get to the front of the line, or trying to get to the front of the battle, or trying not have to walk as far, especially as a leader, a rally leader or garrison leader or things like that, which we'll bring to another point. But there's nothing more frustrating than literally being a fraction of a pixel off of putting down your shelter in a specific location, or like in the middle of battle. There's nothing more frustrating than watching a specific position where you have, like I mentioned, where you're literally, you know, just a pixel out of the way, just one fragment of a section out of the way that you can't actually get your shelter in. So you always want to be kind of aware of where you're putting that. Which brings me to my second comment when it comes to shelter placement. If you are a smaller account, and yes, I am specifically talking to tier 5 players, for example, I'm specifically talking to 100 million might players that are fighting in elite. I'm not talking down to you by any stretch. Everybody has to grow, but I'm going to be the first one to tell you, you don't belong in the front line. Yes, you belong close, but you want that front line where the action to be, where your rally captains are, where your rally leaders are, and where your super strong players are, where your focus is. If all of a sudden we have a situation like Let's see if I can find any example. This guy right here, right? 90 million up at the front of the action. Now, yes, granted, we're moving into here. We're starting to build into here. But when we first started moving into here, 90 million. No offense, okay? But we are in 200 million elite territory. You should not be on the front line. You should not be there, period. And it's one of the things I try to tell the Alliance, and I try to keep, like, you want to make sure where you're placing your shelter, not only is it close to everybody else, so you're using up as much space as you can, but you want to be in a place where you can help from what the power gap of your account is. Now, some people might disagree with this. They might think, well, how can I help if I'm not up in the front? And sure, you're going to have that logic. And some people might disagree with me because it's kind of playing to the stronger players. But the truth is, we have to be as efficient as possible. For the most part, we all don't have thousands of relocators, right? So we want to make sure that even then, if you're in the front, I mean, there's also nothing worse as being one of the leaders or rally leaders of garrisons, and you step out just for a second to go, something at home, and you come back and there's no space left, and the only people that are there are small accounts that aren't even logged in anymore, right? They've logged out for the day or whatever it is. So my biggest pet peeve is when smaller accounts do their thing and take up space on the front line. Do yourself a favor, take a step a little bit back to the second or third row, and leave the front space for those who can support and who can do all the heavy lifting that needs to be there, right? And again, this is nothing on any one individual player. Everybody does this, but I believe wholeheartedly that if everyone stopped doing that, we would see a whole better process to the game. So keep that in mind when we're talking about shelter placement. Get as close as you can to each other. Use as much of be as efficient in your placement as possible, and be smart in where you place yourself based on what you're capable of doing. Okay. Next, we're going to talk about coordinating rallies, garrisons, and counter rallies, things like that. Because here's the thing. Inside of Archipelago Raid, inside of Island Raid, and all that kind of stuff, you need to coordinate not only with your team, but with your allies and with your Legion mates and things like that to be able to attack efficiently. Because again, this game, I want to be efficient. So I'll give you a prime example. When we're rallying here, now they're gonna be able to reinforce with 2 million, so I can go ahead and send one rally at it right off the bat. But it's going to be smarter if we send 3 rallies, because in AR you can send 3 rallies. You want to send 3 rallies close in proximity so that they hit and are hitting at the same time. There is nothing worse than getting into an event where there's no coordination in those rallies. So I always suggest, especially in Archipelago Raid, if your R4s are doing a good job inside of their chat rooms, they're going to coordinate who are the rally captains for the Legion, what are the fight times for the Legion, all that kind of stuff. They're going to coordinate that and organize it so that the majority of players don't have to worry about that. But if you find yourself in a situation where you're having, work to be coordinated, even if you have to work outside of the leadership. If your leadership's not doing it for your event, you might have to step in and do it yourself. Start coordinating and getting those attacks so that you can actually benefit the best ways that you can from using your troops and using your heroes and all that kind of stuff. And this means counter rallies, right? So let's take a look at some reports, because I have a couple of reports here. I was garrison captain for a couple things. For a couple big hits. Nothing special. We ended up getting beat on, I ended up getting beat on a couple of them too. Let's see if I can find one where we're actually, no. Let's look at one that I lost to. Because that's one where we ended up taking 3, right? We got Jorna, we got Freya, and we got Mini Boss. And then Jokin, I guess we technically had 4. So let's take a look at these reports, right? So I'm dealing with this guy here. We're dealing basically against 6 million troops. We've got 2 million troops against 6 million troops. And with what I'm garrisoning here, they're going to send 3 rallies after me. They're going to send Stella Bodala. They're going to send Chasey Rubina. Obviously, which hurts a lot more because, that's a lot of damage that's coming in anyways. And then they're going to send another one here. Mini Boss sent this one to help debuff because they sent the Claude there as well. So they got Claude to debuff. Okay? And as we go through here, we're starting to see why coordinating those rallies is quite important. I've got an infantry rally, so what they did was they sent an infantry rally first to kind of tank all that main damage, which they do here, right? Stella Bodala ends up beating my Boyd Claude. But a lot of that also comes down to beasts, so our beasts end up balancing off. Not so bad. They've got better hero armaments than I do, so they've got a better overall set there. Their vehicle is a little bit stronger than mine as well, so, you know, in the long run, Jorna ends up beating me. But if it wasn't for refilling and coordinating rallies and refilling, you know, starting counter rallies and all this kind of stuff, you have to kind of keep in mind what pieces you're playing. I'm infantry garrison, so they're going to send an infantry first to tank, followed by what should be 2 ranged. They sent an infantry and a rider, but if they were really smart, they'd send 2 ranged if they had them instead. Now, this could just be this is the best that they have, which is fine, because it still ends up destroying, right? Chasey Rubina coming from there when it's not the main focus is still going to hurt. And running double garrison beasts there. Again, on a rally, when I'm not taking full damage, all mine is counter damage. So still going to hurt there and kind of deal some extra that way as well. So it becomes a situation where you want to be coordinated. You want to be, you know, on the same breath with the rest of your team. Sending those rallies seconds apart so that they hit seconds apart. Tanking up front. Sending damage dealers afterwards. And then filling and refilling from there. Don't forget counter rallies. The reason I mentioned counter rallies and the reason I wanted to pull up this report, the first one that we lost, was because there were no counter rallies being done on these rallies. And so because there's no counter rallies being done on these rallies, this one here is able to hit as much as it is. It's able to hit for free and deal a bunch of damage. If we had counter rallies run right off the rip, you can start to mitigate this by bringing down these rallies and so they don't have as much HP. But what I've noticed is that you can't really, like the first rally, because there's a 5-minute gap. So that first rally that hits, for the most part, again, depending on where you're fighting, for the most part is already going to be at like half HP into yellow and things like that before your rally marches because it's the main target on the garrison. So I'm not necessarily a huge fan of counter rallying the first rally that hits, but the second and third definitely need counter rallies on them very, very quickly so that you can start to mitigate some of their unrelenting damage. Because like I mentioned, if you're not the main focus, you're dealing basic attack damage and skill damage, and they're only dealing counter damage to you, so you're kind of at a massive advantage. Okay, so keep that in mind. Coordinate rallies, coordinate garrisons, coordinate counter rallies. Make sure that you have the players in the rightful position, and make sure your leadership team is getting that done before the event starts. Don't be waiting until you're in the middle of war to try to figure out who's running what. Figure that out ahead of time. Okay, that's what the first day is for, effectively. Next, once you have your rallies coordinated and once you're running your rallies, one thing you need to pay attention to is keeping the field filled and supported with your field troops as well. Not only are we doing this to kill reinforcements that might come in, like if you're rallying a target, for example. Let's see if we've actually got some action, because I know that gold and red are fighting. Right, so we can look up here. Yeah, we got some rallies going right now, rallies and counter rallies. So we've got some rallies going up on their tower, right? Their tower is... Okay, but where? Oh, their tower's right here. Okay, so they're running the tower right here. They've got rallies that are on the tower. And they've got counter rallies that are currently hitting the rallies. And then they're swarming out the counter rallies. But this is why you have to be coordinating, and this is why you have to support with the field. Not only are they helping support with swarming to help get rid of some of these counter rallies that are here, and again, take advantage of this basic and skill damage when all they're taking is counter damage in, you know, in response. But coordinating those so that your right rallies are hitting at the right time, right situations are hitting at the right time, and being supported at the right time. As these troops are going into the tower to refill, you should be having your field supporters killing those troops off to weaken that garrison as much as possible. The more that you can weaken that garrison before it ends up falling, or the more that you can weaken that garrison overall, the faster that it goes down. So killing those troops as they're refilling is super important, but that only happens if you have the field support by following those rallies as well. Now, I used to believe wholeheartedly that this game was just about rallies and garrisons, and a lot of that is still true. I have noticed the benefits of field fighting as well. I have noticed, the give and take and the kind of the, how do I put it? Kind of the nuance that comes with field fighting, the importance behind it. And so I do now understand far better the nuances to why field is important and what you're going to use it for. Okay, so not only are you using it to limit your opponent's troops and things like that, and you're hoping to do more damage than they deal to you, but a lot of it is for control as well. A lot of it is for buffing and debuffing. I mean, you don't know how much potency you have as an infantry main, for example, running Marco Claude in the field, hitting a zombie right beside a rally so that you can still buff and debuff based on the zombies. I've seen it work, for example, when it comes to Bianca buffing garrisons and stuff like that by hitting zombies next to him. There's tons of interesting ways that you as a player can influence the field fight outside of just rallies and garrisons. So rallies and garrisons are important, but don't forget you need to support those rallies and garrisons with the field, not only to help you reinforce your rallies and garrisons, but to kill the reinforcements that might be going into those rallies or garrisons. Okay. Number 4, we're going to talk about troop restriction. This might be something that most people don't, or it seems to me that a lot of people still don't know about, but there is a cool couple of functions that you can use to make your rallying and garrisoning far more efficient. This little button right here, you see this little settings button? This allows me to go in here and restrict what troops are allowed to be put into garrison. So right now this is an infantry only garrison, which means that I will only get infantry troops. You cannot send ranged or riders. You cannot send them because they are locked to infantry. Just like this, we can do this with garrisons. Guess what? We can do this with rallies. If I go start a rally, now this I believe happens after you get HQ level 21, but for the most part I'm talking to the more veteran player. Okay, when you go rally and you start a rally, there is that settings function up here as well, which allows you to lock and restrict troop types. I don't know why it still seems to me that a lot of people don't know this, but if you don't restrict it, you will find an infantry rally running with riders, running with ranged, and that is going to be at a disadvantage because those troops are not getting the benefit of your infantry your infantry heroes, which are providing a ton of skills, a ton of benefits, and a ton of stats that go with your infantry. Okay, so it's one of those things, if you don't restrict it, you will end up with mixed marches, and those are almost never a benefit. So keep those in mind. Troop restrictions on rallies, troop restrictions on garrisons, super, super important. Next, we're going to talk filling and refilling rallies and garrisons, and one of the biggest things that most people don't realize, because here's the thing, normally what happens is if someone runs a rally, if I want to join the rally, I'm going to join it through this menu here. But if I have to recall from that rally, I have to go into the rally menu, find my name, and click the recall button on my name, which is a massive headache because especially if you're getting in the heat of battle where you're refilling and filling and people are recalling and adding and all this stuff all the time, your name is going to jump up and down that list, and now you still have to find it as it's jumping back and forth. That's a big headache. I'm going to show you a big trick. If I send a march, this little button up here, you see this little up-down button? I can open this thing up here. I have a recall button here. I can recall my march directly from here, from rallies, from garrisons, from everything else. So I no longer have to go into the menu like I have here in this garrison and recall this way. I can recall from this tab instead. I can recall from rallies from this tab instead. So I don't have to go back into the warfare, find the rally that I'm in, click into that menu, find where I am in that. I don't have to go through that whole headache. I can recall directly from here. Now, why is it important? You have to remember the strength of a garrison is based, and a rally is based on, a lot of it has to do with the total amount of troops that are involved inside the rallying garrison. So you want to make sure that you're as full as possible. But from what I understand, now I could be wrong, but from what I understand, if I send in a march with 350 troops, 350,000 troops, okay, or 250,000 troops, something like that, and I let it get really low, I let it get down into the red, okay, so that it only has, say, 20,000 troops left. That means that there's 230,000 troops that cannot be refilled until my march is refilled. Okay. Now this, again, this is what I've been told, and this is what I have understood. Now, if this is totally wrong, feel free to correct me in the comments. But from what I've been told, what I understand is that you cannot refill the portion of troops that were lost in that march. So part of them are handled. And this is why, for example, you'll see a march or a rally that'll look full, a garrison will look full, but you'll look inside of it and there's a whole bunch of zero troops. A whole bunch of zero troops, like people haven't refilled their marches. Okay? Now, even if it's not the case, let's say hypothetically it's not the case. It's still based on, I'm just saying that just to cover my own ass, but let's say hypothetically it is the case. You want to make sure that you're refilling your march as often as possible to keep it as high as HP as possible. Okay? So when you see your march drop, as your HP drops and it hits yellow, recall, resend. Don't wait until it gets down to red. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of resources. Okay, once it gets down to yellow, recall and resend. Recall and resend, unless you're garrison captain. That's a totally different work. But recall from here and then resend. And don't forget, you need to do this with rallies too. You cannot just send a rally and then not refill it. Rallies need to be refilled as well. Which is going to take us to our next... No, that's what we're actually talking about, is filling and refilling rallies. You have to refill those rallies. If you don't, you're basically giving up on the fight. And I think that's not appropriate for anybody. I think everybody should be getting into the fight and doing what they can, the best they can for their team. If you choose not to, you don't really last in most big teams. This is going to bring us to... Actually, no, that's not yet. We're a point away from that. But it's really based around being a selfish player versus being a team player. Okay? And I say that with all earnesty because each player has to come to terms with it themselves. But there's a couple things that happen in events, in fighting events, that really kind of annoy me. For example, at the 6s, at the 7s, right? And at the 8s, you have these curios. And they give buffs. And some of them give attack buffs or defense buffs. Or right now I have an HP buff. And people get mad when you kill their troops that are going to pick up a buff. I don't understand what the anger is. Number one, most people send one troop. So you're losing one troop. Big deal. Number two, if you're sending a full march, that's kind of your own fault. And number three, it's a war game. Why am I going to let you pick up a weapon? That doesn't make any sense. But yet people find it necessary to complain about it in chat every single time when it happens that somebody ends up killing their just going to get a buff guys. Sorry, but that's just like to me, that's a selfish way to play it. And I'm not a huge fan of playing this game selfishly because it's not a selfish game. It's a community-based, group-based game. It's an alliance teamwork game. There's 170 people you have to play with. It's not just about one person. Yes, we get into situations where you end up relying on one person who ends up wailing out harder than anybody else, but that's not every single case. You look at GROP, we got a ton of depth. We don't have one or two big whales. We've got a handful of smaller, on the stronger side of average players who just put in the work every time. And I think that's the biggest thing. So that, to me, is why playing selfishly doesn't really work. Okay? And I'll give you some selfish acts. For example, Like I said, complaining about buff killers. It's a war game. Get over it. I'll give you another example. Swarming unprotected shelters. Super selfish. Not only are you, for the most part, losing a ton on the trades, you're not winning those trades. Number two, there can only be, 8 or 10? I think it's 10 things that can hit 10 marches that can attack a shelter once. And if you have 40 marches waiting, only 10 of them get to deal damage. Which is what? 2 players? 2 players out of the whole legion that wants to burn a target, which also means you're losing more troops because only 10 marches can attack at once. And let's say every march, right, each of the 10 marches had the 50% expansion. So they're bringing 350,000 troops, right? 370,000 troops each. That's 3.7 million. If you're swarming someone with 7 million troops, you're not winning those trades. Right? For the most part, you're not winning those trades. They're getting way more points off you than you are. You're smarter off rallying their target. You're smarter off sending rallies. I mean, granted, it depends on the target. If you're looking at a 90 million player who puts himself on the front line, no, you can swarm them all day and it is what it is. You're just going to get lucky. But if you're looking at a bigger player, a 220 million player, something like that, you're not going to swarm them. You're going to rally them. But the amount of times I see people swarming them, taking horrendous trades, giving up points, giving up kills to get nothing, it's just bothersome. Swarming unprotected shelters, swarming rallies, swarming garrisons. I know you see the big players do it. Guys, I'm gonna be real with you. I know you see the bigger players doing it. Right? Swarming seems like a fun thing, but I'm gonna be the first one to tell you, for 95% of players, it's not the move, homie. It is not the move. It's not the play. Most players will not be swarming players. You need massive armament sets. You need great stats to go with it. And a ton of troops because you're automatically facing loss. And typically more because you're bringing less troops than what the garrison has. So for the most part, for 95% of players, swarming almost anything is not the right move. It's not the right move. Yes, there are some outside, but that's a different story. So, what else is kind of big no-no? Well, I'll be honest with you guys. One of the biggest no-nos for a lot of alliances, a lot of fighting alliances, is something we called friendly PvP. When you go into a fighting event, you should be doing everything you can to fight for that alliance, for that event. You should not be going in just hunting for your own points. It's not just about your points, it's about how you coordinate with the rest of the team. So for example, in GROP, there's no such thing as PvP. There's no such thing as messaging the chat board to say, hey, I want to fight. Let's just send troops one-on-one until we get some points. No such thing. You do that in GROP, you get kicked out. Okay? You don't get eligible for gold. You don't get anything. That's not a viable way to play. Because at the end of the day, like I said, you want to make sure that you're using your resources for the alliance. Everybody else is doing it. You need to do it too. And if you're not a team player, you're not a player here. Now, you might find some alliances that allow it, but you'll also find that those alliances aren't normally winning. They're not normally doing best. They're not normally placing well. They're not playing an elite. They're not playing to the best of their capabilities. They're just kind of playing with a thumb up their ass. And I'm sorry, but I don't want to do that. Right? I want to play to the best of my ability, and that's what we've kind of created. So, PvP, big no-no. Just like getting rallied for points. Putting yourself in a dangerous situation so that someone else can rally you so that you can take a rally and then shield before you start taking losses is a ridiculous way to play the game. Yes, you get points. Yes, you get kills. Yes, you can do all this kind of stuff, and you can stack your pad your totals and all this kind of stuff, but there is almost no benefit to it. Right? You're putting yourself in harm's way selfishly just to get points. Right? It's not like you're doing that to capture a point or anything like that. Like typically if you're in that area or if you're in a dangerous position and you've put yourself there, there's no strategic point that comes out of it. Unless you're a super whale, at which point it doesn't really matter. You can do whatever you want anyways. You can swarm everybody, and my opinion doesn't matter. But for 95% of players, putting yourself in harm's way just to get rallied for points, big no-no. And lastly, specifically during war times. If we're in war, if we're garrisoning, if we're rallying, if we're doing all that kind of stuff, if we were actively at war fighting, right now we're not, but if we were actively at war fighting, sending rallies, sending garrisons, things like that, one of the biggest pet peeves, hive minds. Do not run hive minds during wartime. This warfare page will get full with enemy rallies coming in, with your rallies going out, with warnings for scouting, all this kind of stuff. If you muddle this up with hive mind suggestions during wartime, you are a piece of shit. Openly and honestly. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it, okay? But that's really about it. So we've gone through, and I'll just run through this very quickly because it's been a longer video. We've got shelter placement, coordinating rallies, garrisons, and counter rallies. We've got supporting those rallies with field support so you can kill the reinforcements and help you reinforce your own stuff. We've got troop restrictions on rallies and garrisons. Don't forget those. Filling and refilling rallies and garrisons. Recalling from the March tab. Remember, as we've said over here, recall from the March tab. Okay? Don't go through and try to do, through the long way. You're just going to get carried away and all that kind of stuff. Do yourself a favor. Don't do a lot of swarming. Like I said, for the most part, swarming shelters, swarming rallies, swarming garrisons is a very specific talent that most people do not possess. And then lastly, the big no-nos, no PvP, no getting rallied for points, no hive minds during war times, all that kind of stuff. Just be smart. Everybody there is there putting their heart on the line, putting their time on the line to make sure that everyone has the best time possible. At least that's what they should be. And if you're not in an alliance like that, get into an alliance like that because it's so much better when everyone's on the same page. All right? But that's going to wrap it up for this long video. I hope you guys have had fun. If you have, if you've enjoyed what we're talking about, or if you agree with what I say or disagree, go ahead and show me in the comments. Let me know what you think. Give me some of your do's and don'ts when it comes to wartime events as well. How does your alliance run? Right? Give that out there and put it in the comment section. Other than that, folks, if you haven't already, like the channel, subscribe to the channel, fill out the notification bell, comments down below, and share it with your alliance and friends. The more that we can grow the community, the better. So I'm hoping you guys can help me with that. As 2026 continues, we're progressing pretty nicely. So I'm very, very happy with the community for backing us. So let's just keep it rolling. But other than that, folks, love, peace, chicken grease, and until next time, stay lifted.